This is a story of how I met David. This all started last summer, 2024, and it was a few days after school had let out. I'm a junior high school science teacher. I decided to go ahead and join a dating app just to see if I could meet someone. I guess in my fantasy, I thought maybe I'd have a summer romance, like you read in books or see in the movies. When I joined the site, I didn't really have any intention to meet someone or fall in love forever. I guess maybe I thought if I'd meet someone over the summer locally, we could go out, have some drinks, have some dinner, maybe meet some cool friends. Who really knew? David started liking my profile. Now, I joined a site that's not really well known. It's a free dating app, and it's basically sort of like social media, but for dating people. You can like photos, and you can send little gold tokens, and if they like what they see, they can send you one back. Well, David sent me a couple of gold tokens, which it ups your status on the site, and the more tokens you have, the more your profile is seen, and the better chances you have of meeting someone special. When I got a notification that he had given me a token, I went over to his profile. And now keep in mind when you go to someone else's profile, or if they go to yours, it notifies who shows you and who sees your profile. I went through his profile and he didn't have a whole lot on there. It looked like he had just joined the site within a few months because it does tell you how long they've been on there. He had a couple of photos. One of them is him, and it looked like he was wearing some sort of construction helmet. The other one he had was a photo of him in a business suit. On his profile, it said he was 45, and I'm 42, and I've been divorced now for several years. I have no kids, and being a teacher, the students are like my second family and my kids that I never had. I threw him a token. I put a like on a couple of his photos just to show interest, and he would send me a token back. He said he was an engineer, and he wasn't really specific as to where his location was, but it said Miami, Florida on his profile. Well, once you send this token, the other person can open up a chat for you, and you can accept the token and start chatting. So I went ahead and opened the chat, and him and I sent messages, first telling him I thought he looked really handsome, and noticed that he noticed me, and I told him that I'd like to chat if you have the time. Well, after I sent my message to him, he didn't reply right away. In fact, he didn't reply for 3 days, and I thought maybe he wasn't interested, or I just kind of went on with my browsing online and went on with my summer. As I said, I'm a teacher, so being out for vacation means a lot to me. I actually had forgotten about the messages, and over the past few days, and went ahead and went about my house cleaning and my projects around the house and enjoyed the summer. But I got a notification that David had read my message and wrote a reply. He had apologized for the late reply to me, but that he was busy. He'd been traveling for work and he had just gotten settled into his hotel. He said he loved my profile photo and would love to get to know me more better as he introduced himself, telling me a little bit more about where he's from, and he told me he resides in Miami, Florida, but that he travels a lot for work and he had just currently landed in Malaysia for a business project. He said he was an engineer with an oil and gas pipeline specializing in natural gas pipelines more than crude oil. He got very job specific, telling me all about what he did and how he did safety inspections and installed pipelines with a crew, and how he worked for a very major oil company that probably most of us know. He told me, though, that this was his only work and that he was a widow. His wife had died from kidney cancer 5 years prior, and he had an 8-year-old daughter named Amelia who was staying with his mom, her grandmother, back in Miami, Florida. While we were chatting, I didn't really keep tabs on what he was saying other than the gist of things. He typed very long paragraphs in the chat and said that it was a very job specific thing, talking about different pipes and different uses of gases and safety measures and things that honestly I didn't care about. But I thought maybe he was just like that. An engineer's mind has to be very detailed. He asked what I do for work, and I told him that I was a school teacher and that I'm out on summer holiday, but I teach middle school science students. He thought I was very smart, and I thought that was great, and I told him that I was educating the future. In fact, he said that he was thrilled to know that I was a teacher and that he has a lot of respect for teachers, and we started talking more. He told me more about his daughter and how she really misses him and while he's away, and he said he would be in Malaysia for about a month, and then he would fly home to Miami, and then he was going to take his daughter to Disneyland in California once he got home. I thought that was great and wonderful and that he was raising his daughter, but he did talk often about how much that he missed his wife and how much his daughter missed her mother. We shared this little communication back and forth in the app, and after about 4 or 5 days, he asked me if I had WhatsApp. I did, but I don't use it a whole lot, but we exchanged phone numbers, and I figured what harm could it do? We started texting on WhatsApp back and forth. He told me a little bit more about his life. He said he lived in Miami again, and he never changed that through the whole course of this relationship or chat. That's one thing he made sure. He would always say, I live in Miami. But he told me that he was born in Hamburg, Germany, and his mother was Polish, and his father, he didn't know. He was only in his life for a short time, but his mother had told him that his father had lived in Spain and was of Spanish origin. He said that his wife had died and that his wife was originally from the Caribbean. So that was kind of an interesting mix of cultures, he said. He picked up a little bit of his wife's accent because they had been together for so long, and he said he was embarrassed to talk on the phone with me, all because of his accent. I told him there's no need to be embarrassed. An accent is an accent. It doesn't make the person, and I actually could find the call quite fun and cute. But he told me he would call me and he would try his best not to have that thick accent, as he said, being around his wife for so many years, he sounds like he's from the Caribbean, which I found to be a little strange because you don't tend to pick up accents. I mean, I lived in Hawaii for several years, and while I picked up a little of the lingo and the slang, I certainly don't speak like a native Hawaiian from the islands. Well, he called me, and he definitely had an accent, but it wasn't Caribbean, from what I could tell. When I asked him where his wife was from in the Caribbean, he wouldn't specifically say what area. He just said that they'd been together so long that when they met, they were young, and he just kind of picked up her accent, and also having parents from Europe and being from Germany, he said it was a whole mix of different cultures. Well, something felt wrong to me. But I kept talking to him, and he went on and on about how his wife passed away and how his daughter misses him and that he's on contract in Malaysia, and he actually just kept repeating himself over and over again about the story. I don't know if he was trying to make me believe or convince himself, and he told me he was installing a $1 billion project pipeline gas line in Malaysia and that he would have to go offshore soon to inspect the property area, which made no sense to me, but I told him, well, I hope you have a good time and that you get home safely. He said once he returned again, he was going to take his daughter to Disneyland. I asked him how often he goes abroad, and he says all the time. And in fact, he was in Ghana 2 months ago doing a big construction gas pipeline project to bring natural gas to the people of Ghana. I asked him how long he's been on the internet and how long he's dated online, and he told me he doesn't. He asked me the same and asked me how many men I've met online. I told him I work as a teacher. My kids, my students, they mean everything to me. Well, he got a little confused and he asked me how many kids, and I told him, well, typically up to 45, sometimes less. I don't think he understood because he took it as I had 45 children. And I tried to explain to him once again it's my classroom, but I don't really think he got it. We continued to talk and just chatting back and forth. We had called several times on voice call, but the phone conversations were quite short, and he would rather text, is what he told me, as it was easier for him. He said he was still embarrassed by his thick Caribbean accent. As time went on, we just texted back and forth mainly. He told me he was still in Malaysia and that he really missed his daughter, and then he told me that his daughter was in college. Well, early on in our conversation, he had said his daughter was quite young and staying with grandma. All of a sudden, he has a daughter in college. So I asked him, do you have two kids? And he said, no, just Amelia, his young little daughter. I said, but she's at college. And he said, yes, that she's 18 years old. I kind of took this as maybe he mistyped when he first told me that she was 8. I don't know, something seemed wrong, but he kept telling me that his daughter missed him and that he was so proud of her for going to college. Well, it's summertime here, and I figured She was going to school in Miami, but since she lived with grandma, but then he told me no, she was suddenly now in the UK at a special college. As he put it, it's an all-girls boarding school. She was going to learn to be a pilot. I just found this quite odd, but I didn't say anything. I just said, well, you must be proud of her, and he said, yes, absolutely. When I started questioning him more about the school she was in and what type of pilot school in the UK and where in the UK, I actually lied to him and told him I have family over there. He stopped talking about his daughter. He then went on about his oil pipeline contract and started sending me photo after photo of pipelines and construction work things. Like he had told me that the hotel in Malaysia one day had an issue with his credit card and that his company card had been frozen and something had happened to the company bank account. He then asked me if I could give him 4,000 US dollars to help pay for his months of staying at the hotel. But what was weird was he was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden he needs money for months of a hotel stay? He told me he would pay me back triple when he returned to Miami and straightened out this bank account issue. I told him, well, his company should have another credit card or some kind of different account. Companies like yours are huge and doing pipeline construction. They definitely have petty cash and they have other corporate cards. But he said no, the whole account, everything was frozen, and he had no petty cash. He said when he tried to use his own bank card to pay for his hotel room, the hotel couldn't take it because he was a foreigner. Well, now, I've traveled a bit, and I told him, no, they'll take your card. You may have to call your bank and let them know to release the funds that you're traveling abroad and just give them the country you're in, but within a day, that should all be sorted out and should be fine. Well, he said he couldn't call because his phone had ran out of data, as he was talking to me so much that he had no more data on his phone and asked me to get him a $500 iTunes card. Now, me, being a lifelong Apple user, know damn well you don't use an iTunes card to load minutes on a phone. And if there's a Wi Fi connection, you can just use Wi Fi in a public setting and do Wi Fi calling. I told him you can call on WhatsApp if your phone is not out of minutes like you claim, or even if it is, just go to a cafe, hook up your Wi Fi, and do Wi Fi calling, and then you can call your bank. Because Apple iTunes cards don't work that way. He said if I just get him the card, he can go ahead and call his work again and call his bank and everything would be okay. Well, I told him no, I don't get Apple or iTunes cards and I don't live anywhere close to where they sell the cards. He then had taken the information about where I live in my city and sent me a Google search result of all the places that sell iTunes Apple cards. I told him if you're able to Google search, you must have internet connection. Go ahead and make that Wi Fi call to your boss, your bank, and straighten out the company credit card. Tell them to send you some money. Or better yet, use that money and maybe do some Wi Fi calling to call your bank and have them release your money stating that you're in another country. Well, he said because of his company bank card being hacked suddenly, now they were hacked and he didn't get his paycheck and he has no money in his bank account. I asked him, are you living paycheck to paycheck? Because an engineer makes a lot of money. He told me yes, but because he pays for his daughter's schooling and he depends on each check to come in to pay his bills, and he then asked me again if I would wire some money to the hotel clerk in Malaysia that could help him pay for his hotel stay. At this point, I knew this was a scam. I encountered a few guys like this in the past, but I was just hoping he would be real. I told him, sure, give me the information for the man at the hotel and I'll go ahead right away and send the money. Well, he gave me the information. He actually gave me what I think was his real name, and it was a Nigerian man living in Malaysia, as the name was Nigerian. And when I looked him up on social media, I found some of the same photos he had sent me right away in his album. A couple of the pictures he sent were actually photos of some dress shoes that he said he was going to wear to his business meetings. Well, in this man's real name, his profile on social media, there was photos of the same shoes and the same suit. And in fact, I had a photo of him wearing the suit that he had taken a picture of for me and sent me saying he was going to wear this to his big business meeting. So I knew I had my guy. I ended up just blocking him. I didn't want to play with him any longer, and I'd already seen who he was and that he was scamming, and in fact, his real social media, it looked like he had a girlfriend or a young child, and I was maybe a wife or something, I'm not sure. I was uninterested in continuing to waste my time with someone like him. But be warned, do your research when things don't make sense, even if it's the smallest flaw or the smallest trip up. There was huge red flags in the chat, and it takes 5 minutes to look someone up on social media. I didn't hear from him again, and I actually deleted the app, and I was tired. I shared more fakes in the app than anything else, and didn't find anyone worthy of talking to. Keep in mind that they don't always look for inconsistencies in stories, and you really need to. And what people are telling you, it might be a scammer who slips up, gets the wrong age of their child, or changes the name or location of where they're from, or they suddenly can't pay for something. Remember, people have high paying jobs as engineers, doctors, and attorneys, and all these kinds of people have money set aside for credit cards and things that they need to take care of business. Don't fall victim to the shady stories. We'd like to thank this lady for sharing her encounter. Fortunately, she did not send money and she did see the red flags and the inconsistencies. Remember, when you talk to somebody online, it doesn't hurt to take notes. It doesn't hurt to just jot down the age of their child, where they say they're from, and what they do for a living. Many romance scammers slip up in their stories. The really good ones don't tend to, but there's a lot of amateurs out there who do. Until next time, stay safe. If you'd like to share your story, scamming@gmail.com. Drop me your story, any screenshots to help verify your story, and I will narrate it into a video. Until next time.